and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me again. My name is Wilky. We're here at Silo Theta. Keep in mind we have the modifications Deviant Scourge. Get toughened, so our weak spot damage is better, but our base damage is lower. And side effects means the boss takes less damage unless we use continuous damage effects, which we do not have. Now, I'm going to be running this twice, and I'm focusing mainly on the two weapons that I'm still using. It's not really an attempt. I'm just a little bit bummed out that the latest build that I uploaded gotten a little bit into a direction that I did not actually foresee. While, let me preface this by saying the following. I always advocate and will for people to share their opinions and express their opinions, because there's nothing worse than having an army of shills and white knight just being a loyal follower and just head downing and agreeing to everybody a content creator says. We're all just people, and despite me being a small one, this applies to bigger ones as well. My opinion is just as valid as other people's opinions, especially if they're displayed in a more constructive fashion. Now, the purpose and the point of my build that I'm currently running is not to be the highest DPS build. It never was, and I think this should be very, very obvious by the way I showcased or I designed this build. So I'm a bit confused that some people have gone the lengths or went down the rabbit hole and just, you know, generally trash talking others, or just saying that the build is terrible. I don't really understand the metric, or rather, it seems that for people, or for some people, obviously we're just talking about a few people that commented there, it seems that for most people, fun is defined being the hardest hitting build, which is a valid approach, but as I said, for me, fun is defined in having a useful build that is working in almost all, or ideally in every scenario that is. And that is, or that was, the goal of this build, and still is. And this is why I'm showcasing this. As I said, the first run is mostly focusing on the Wildfire, and the second run I will be using the Doombringer mostly. And as I showed the modifiers in the beginning, that the Wildfire is definitely not having useful modifiers in here. But you can see that I don't really struggle with anything. Obviously, yes, I skipped the super anomaly, but I can just use my cradle and kill it. But that's besides the point. The point I wanted to make, or I wanted to showcase, is that there are build opportunities out there that allow you to have a universally good build. Not the best build, not the best build for any content out there, just a universally good build that allows you to clear content nice, in a more or less relaxed fashion. You can see that I'm not really in a stress situation, I'm not running any food buffs, I'm not really like fully decked out. And my mods aren't even super great to begin with, as I showcased in the build video itself. So I'm a bit confused why this went in a bit of a direction, but I guess people just wanted to see the builds have like magnificently high DPS or something, which is obviously not the case. But it's far from terrible. Yes, other builds will out DPS me, and I think that is, or shouldn't be, any surprise to people here. But as I mentioned before, this was never the point of my video. This was never the point of the build to begin with. And this just is there as a showcase that other builds and other guns work fine, and there are several ways to approach content, combat, and, you know, just things in general. And as I mentioned, the first one is focused on the Wildfire itself. So I want to showcase that even though I'm at a disadvantage here in terms of modifiers, in terms of power, because let's just say it the way it is, the Wildfire is useful in a very, very large amount of scenarios. But it definitely isn't the hardest hitting gun, especially not in a crit-based build. But it's good enough to do virtually anything that we need it to do. And that is clear the silo without really too much trouble. So, as I said, I'm a bit bummed out by the idea that it seems that builds that aren't super min-maxed are talked down or I wouldn't even call it belittling, but it feels like some people just genuinely don't see this as viable, despite you just saw that, you know, this is working perfectly fine. And for me, for example, fun is having a loadout that I know I can bring here, I can bring to a monolith, I can bring to another silo, and I know it'll work. This may not be fun for other people. Some other people prefer being highly optimized for each specific content, and that is perfectly valid too. So yeah, this is just really showcasing for those people out there that, despite I already showcased this before, but this build is definitely not terrible. Yes, it's not the highest DPS, and yes, a fully optimized Doombringer build, likewise a fully optimized Wildfire build, will perform better. But you can see we're doing just fine. There really isn't any struggle. Yes, I'm skipping super anomalies, but I generally always skip them. I just don't like them, but that's a personal matter. And yeah, you can see that this is working. There's nothing really here that deters me from saying that this build is useful. Yes, it's not high as DPS, but it's working just fine. You can do pretty much anything you want and be good. If you like using the setup, if you like using those guns, then by all means, this thing is working. And yes, the Doombringer obviously still kicks major ass. Like, anybody who thinks otherwise, the Doombringer just slaps. It's just the way it is. So that's not really the point, though. We're not really here to showcase the Doombringer per se. I'm just here to showcase that this build is working. Whether or not we're running Wildfire or Doombringer in this scenario, as I said, Wildfire is really not optimal to kill Deviants. We have the 70% damage cap because we don't have continuous damage. So even for the boss fight itself, we dealt less damage. I mean, the Doombringer is going to deal less damage as well, but since the Doombringer just kicks major ass and is much better suited for a crit build, then you'll see the difference in rather speed or damage that we're dealing to the boss. So yeah, needless to say, this is just another showcase that I want you guys to know that don't worry, this build works perfectly fine. And yes, you're not going to be having max DPS on dummies or something, but you're going to be absolutely fine here. So whether or not you like the build or not is totally valid. And as I mentioned, I'm always happy for people to voice their opinions. I want people to give me their opinions and talk about things. Because I think there's nothing worse, as I mentioned earlier, than people just not really talking about a few things. And you can see that obviously damage is much stronger, and the spores here are obviously not really that great to be dealt with the Doom, but it still works. So yeah, you can see the build is working just fine, and there really isn't any particular reason why I'd call this build terrible shit, or, you know, start other people calling names or something. Because hey, we're working just fine. You just saw we popped this with minimal to no effort. So yeah, as I said, I'm always happy for feedback, so please keep on providing feedback on build videos, on run videos, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm always happy to hear your feedback, and just keep it coming, keep it civil. And as I mentioned, TLDR, this build is mainly for comfort and or fun, not for highest DPS, but as showcased here and in prior videos, it works just fine, even when the modifiers aren't coming to play. So feel free to use it. If you don't like it, then don't use it. That is perfectly valid too. I hope that this was still giving you some insights and was enjoyable, and I'll see you guys next time.